The Volvo XC40 T8 Polestar Engineered is still the only plug-in hybrid performance SUV in this segment. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive, see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the efficiency you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as the XC60 T8 Polestar Engineered, it's a mouthful. There's even a recharge in there, I think, at some point, but basically plug-in hybrid XC60 with the sporty stuff on it. Now, they've had this Polestar Engineered package for several years now. For 2024, it just continues on here, so there's nothing really changed, honestly, but it's great that they continue to offer this. And again, it's crazy that they are so far ahead of the pack. And now in 2022, we did have the power boost that came with these. You have a stronger electric motor now in the back. You also have just more power overall, 455 horsepower out of this 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder combo with those electric motors. And as far as the styling, it hasn't changed. I reviewed an XC60 7 years ago. It's basically the same as it was back then. You have slightly sportier styling here with the bumpers front and rear, and I like how the fender flares are painted over. And the big standout thing that lets you know this is serious about performance is those giant Polestar Engineered brakes here, developed in cooperation with Akebono, and I mean, they are massive. They stand out here, especially against this gray paint, and that's the one key giveaway. But otherwise, it still is the really attractive looks that honestly have aged really well. It's impressive that this vehicle is as old as it is and still looks pretty fresh and modern, I'd say. And so yeah, overall, I still think it's a really beautiful design. The interior of the XC60 also hasn't changed much in the past 7 or 8 years here, but in 2022 it did get a little bit of an infotainment refresh here, so it now runs the Android Automotive operating system. It still does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's unfortunately not wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. But it does have that functionality if you don't mind plugging your phone in. And it's still just this 9-inch screen, which these days is, mediocre at best. Most others have larger displays at this point. If you're someone who doesn't love a ton of big displays, then, you might actually enjoy this. It's still, very usable. It's just that it's a little dated looking, and, like the Bluetooth audio streaming isn't a great interface, the satellite radio and all those things. So they work fine, but just the graphics and everything just all seem a little dated. I also don't love, I don't know when they made this change, but the fan speed selector, there's no true auto mode. And a few other brands are doing this as well. I'm not sure why they think this is a good idea. There's never any auto mode. You just pick what intensity you want for the fan speed, and then it's always blasting at that fan speed, regardless of what temperature it decides to do for the auto part of the auto climate control. I wish they would automatically turn down the fans once you get up to temp, but you still got to go in and manually do that. It's like we're taking a step backwards for some reason. I don't know why, but that's the only thing that I'm not in love with here. But otherwise, it works totally fine. Just wish it was wireless for the smartphone integration. But the Google Maps that's built in does work very well. If you want to use that, you can also download a bunch of other apps as long as they're on the Google Play Store. You can put those in here and run those natively as well if you'd like. But otherwise, everything else is still cool. I still love what I believe started out as R-design seats that now are these Polestar Engineered seats. The sportier seats you get, they hug at least my body type in so well and feel so good. And unfortunately, though, they're only heated. There is no cooling. A lot of others these days, especially at this price point, do offer cooled seats, and a lot of them come standard with cooled seats at this price point, which, by the way, is almost $77,000. So not really super acceptable these days to not have cooled seats at 77 grand. But other than that, great seats. Steering wheel's also same great wheel. Gets nice and hot with the heated function in the wintertime there. And gauges are also pretty nice and crisp, pretty high resolution there. Pretty simple, not a whole lot of customization, unfortunately, but they work fine, get the job done. And then otherwise, I still love this Bowers & Wilkins stereo you have right here at the top of the dash and the other speaker grills. It's really attractive looking and sounds fantastic. Still one of the best stereos in this segment, in my opinion, and really well done. And all the materials are also still very nice. I don't love the hard plastic down here by your knee, but other than that, everything is really nice. The only other complaint here with the XC60 interior is there's not a lot of storage space up front. You have good sized pockets in the doors, but in the middle here, just, shallow cup holders, and then you have this little armrest that can fit, a sunglasses case, and that's about it. It's just compared to the others these days that have bigger bins, this just isn't quite as practical from that standpoint, but that's really the only shortcoming. Otherwise, the back seat's still nice and spacious, even by, 2024 standards here, and they're even heated back there, which is a nice touch, and plenty of space. This panoramic roof is great. Cargo space is also still pretty nice and big for this segment, even with the newer competitors that have come out since. And so overall, yeah, still really nice interior if you don't have to have the most high-tech experience possible. But let's start up and go for a drive. Volvo also still uses the same key they've used ever since the beginning of the XC60 here, but it's a really nice key still. It has like a leather feeling on it, metal on the sides, honestly still nicer than a lot of other competitor keys these days. So that is another thing that is totally fine to stay as it is. So of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. And by the way, you have proximity sensors on all 4 doors, which is something some of the other competitors don't offer. So if you want to get into the back seat, you don't have to unlock the front first. You can just hop right in there. And so anyway, you just leave the key in your pocket, twist the engine start button, which I still love that they have, and it turns right on, and usually will default to either a hybrid or electric mode depending on the state of your battery, but most of the time the gas engine won't kick right on. All right, so setting off here in the Volvo XC60 T8 Polestar Engineered. So the first thing that you notice about it, I think the first thing that I notice is the really eager throttle response. It really, even in just the regular hybrid mode here, it loves using those electric motors to give you some really instant and strong response. And so it feels lively. It feels like it wants to go. It feels eager. There's no waiting period. Some other vehicles these days, whether talking gas, hybrid, whatever, they have transmissions that have to figure out what gear to start in, and there's sometimes some muddled experiences. It's been instant response, does exactly what I want it to do every time from the get-go, and it's really nice with the way that it's set up. I also love, the visibility is really good here in the XC60, always has been, and yeah, you can also, I think now even get an option for a camera rearview mirror, which is a new addition here in the past few years, but you also have, the 360 camera, great visibility all around, and very easy to drive. Still feels also a little smaller, I think, than some others these days that compete with this, and so it's a very approachable size, easier to park and things like that, I think. The other thing that you notice immediately is the steering, which I even have it in the setting for firmer feel, but it still is a little light on feel, honestly. I'd like it to feel even, a little bit sportier, especially again, since we're in the Polestar Engineered version, which is, kind of like the equivalent of an M or an AMG or something like that, and yet it feels, still pretty ordinary, but light steering is, usually fine. It's just that you don't have a ton of feel with this one, the way it's set up in particular. But other things here, just cruising in electric mode, it's nice and quiet, nice and serene, and you do have a bunch of different drive modes. So if you want to start with a gas engine on, or if you want to always have electric mode right whenever you first start off, you can do that, providing you have a charge, of course. But the unfortunate thing is the drive modes are buried in a sub menu. You have to go into the settings and then go up to the drive settings, and then it's up in there to actually change your modes. They used to have a nice mode selector here right in the center console, and they got rid of that for some reason, I'm not sure. But I just put up into the Polestar mode, which gives you the most aggressive acceleration and gets everything ready to go. And let's turn down onto this back road and see how it accelerates. Here we go. Gas engine kicks right in and pulls really nicely. And by the way, I did have the engine running before this, so it's not doing that acceleration on a cold engine. But yeah, it's nice and punchy. It feels really strong, and so what we have here now is 455 horsepower with this new punchier setup from the past couple of years, and 523 pound-feet of torque. So a lot of torque, and a good amount of horsepower as well. It adds up to a 4.2 seconds 0 to 60 is what Car and Driver got. Volvo officially claims a 4.5 seconds 0 to 60, but either way, I mean, we're talking about a good amount of punch in this thing. And I also it's interesting that it's electrified punch. It's not straightforward like you get with all the competing vehicles. So the other big change here is the way it makes that power. So previously with the T8 setup, we had a turbocharged and supercharged 4-cylinder engine. Now they ditched the supercharger. It's just turbo here from 2022 and on, and it's 2-liter turbo form combined with 2 electric motors. One made it up to this 8-speed automatic transmission, and then the other one in the rear there to provide you with that all-wheel drive punch. And the motor in the back, it used to be like, I think, 87 horsepower. Now it's like 130 odd horsepower. Still not a huge amount of power, but enough that you can do some mild accelerations around town. Now I have noticed whenever I was trying to just be in the regular hybrid mode and keep it in the electric setting, it still would kick on the gas engine pretty easily. It's not as strong as some of the other better plug-in hybrids that I've experienced from other brands, but you know, it still is you know, good extra boost, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we're coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the Polestar Engineered handles here. So checking it in, and actually good amount of grip here. We have some sportier Pirelli tires. They're 265 wide, and you also have these Öhlins manually adjustable dampers. You have little knobs there you can adjust, but in the back you have to, I think, lift the vehicle up in order to access the knobs in the back to actually adjust all four all around. But powering out of corners is really the magic of this thing. Because of that electric thrust in the back there, it really powers you out of corners so well and makes this feel like it really wants to rotate. It makes it feel very dynamic, and I think that's the thing that I really love about this going around corners, is just the way that it powers out of corners. So we'll do some more of that here in a minute. But also the other big perk you get here with the Polestar Engineered are these larger brakes. You have 15.7-inch rotors in the front. I believe they're 14.2 in the rear, which I think is a little larger than they used to be, if I remember correctly. And there's mixed information about the brakes. Some have said that they're these ones clearly are Akebono brakes. You can see it on the caliper. It's painted there. But others have said that they're Brembos. So it's a little, I couldn't find a clear answer as far as exactly how many pistons the calipers are. I mean, they're massive, as you can see. I believe previously it was a 6-piston Akebono in prior model years. I'm not sure if that is still what is carried over here, or if they've tweaked that a little bit or not. But regardless, you have very strong brakes that, you know, you can clamp down on them really nicely, and it feels really, really good. Yeah, we'll do another acceleration here with the wheel turned. You can feel the front wheels are doing more of the pulling there for sure, and that's something I'm sure would be exaggerated, especially in colder temps, you know, wet weather, things like that. But yeah, it feels it still feels very dynamic though, and again, it always feels so eager. The second you tip in, it gives you a huge ramp up very quickly in the response, and it feels really, really fun. Yeah, we got some more corners here. We'll sample this a little bit more, going uphill this time, and yeah, it's so dynamic. And actually, even though there's not a ton of feel through the wheel, it's so light that gives it an eager feeling as well, with it wanting to change direction very quickly and you know, very easily. And you know, it really, I think, accentuates just the willing nature and also just the capable nature of this handling. I mean, there's no body roll, there's no lean. It's really composed, and just, yeah, it does a really good job with the handling here. And I mean, the tires, you know, 265 wide, it's not massive these days. Some others, you know, have grippier setups, and you know, maybe I could have had a little more grip there, but honestly, you know, it was totally fine. It was just the way the motors are set up that you know, exaggerates that lack of traction. But it's a ton of fun to take on a back road, and it's really impressive. And again, it's hard to compare it to the others out there, because one, I haven't driven all the others out there, but also just because it's so different in its setup. Now, it is heavier than all those others as a result of the electrification here. So these, you know, weigh over 4,700 pounds, but it definitely seems like it doesn't really hold this vehicle back. It still feels, again, very light on its feet, very capable. And sure, I'm guessing if you were taking this on the track, or if you're really pushing it hard, you know, you might find the deficiencies of this compared to some of its lighter competition. But, you know, we're talking about sporty crossovers. I don't really think that it needs to, you know, be amazing at 10/10ths, and it feels really good at, you know, 7/8/10ths, and I think that's plenty good enough. And you know, whenever you do want to just chill out there, you can put it back into the hybrid mode here, and then it switches off the gas engine there, and then you just cruise quietly on a, you know, nice smooth road here. Now, the one thing I will say about the ride quality, that is one thing that you definitely are compromising on here with a Polestar Engineered setup, is, you know, these dampers, I don't know how they're manually set, and I wasn't going to jack the back end up and soften them up on my own, but they're a little bit on the stiff side here, at least with this current setting. And it would be really nice. I mean, that's another thing, the manually adjustable dampers, like, in this kind of a vehicle, do people want to get out their wrench and sit there and, you know, mess with this stuff, especially having to jack up the rear? I mean, I don't think that makes any sense at all, honestly. I mean, it's cool and it's different, but, you know, adjustable dampers, you can press a button and have it do it, you know, in the drive modes, I think makes a lot more sense and would provide a better ride for whatever, you know, you're needing in that moment. That's the beauty of adaptive dampers, and so it's kind of odd they decided not to partake in that. But, you know, the ride is just going to be something you're going to have to compromise on here a little bit. I mean, it's totally fine. I've been driving around here all week in this thing, and it's no hardship. We're not talking about, you know, race car stiff or anything, but just, you know, it's just something, again, you don't have to compromise on with others. Where you have adaptive dampers, you can have the best of all the worlds, and so it's just unfortunate they make you have to, make that choice manually, if that's something you're not excited about. But as far as the other electric stuff here, that's the one thing that also got a nice improvement here for 2022, and obviously continues on here in 2024. So you have, in addition to that stronger rear motor, you have a bigger battery now. It went from like a 9.1 kilowatt hour battery to 14.2, I believe, and that means the range has also grown nicely from about 19 miles of range previously up to about 35 miles of range now. And your mileage will vary depending on your conditions and how you drive and all that. Yeah, I mean, it's a good amount of electric punch. And actually, we will just try and demonstrate here. I'm going to put it into the pure electric mode. I think it will stay in this even if I go full throttle. We'll see. But the pure mode, we'll just see what we can do as far as a highway merge here in just electric mode. And here we go. Okay, when you go full throttle, kicks on the gas engine. Never mind. All right. Well, I will try and get to where I can until it needs to kick it on. I mean, we're gaining speed here. It's still, it's not as good as like the Toyota plug-in hybrids, which are really punchy, and some of the others even, they're a little punchier these days. But as long as you're not too demanding with your acceleration requests, hopefully, you'll be able to actually exhaust that 35 miles of range before you need to actually kick on the gas engine, and this can kind of be an electric XC60 until we get the actual EX60 fully electric version that'll most likely be coming at some point here in a couple of years, largely copying what we see probably from EX90. But let me see though. I'm going to put on the adaptive cruise control system. This one does have the Pilot Pro Assist, I believe is what they call it, which is their adaptive cruise control system with lane keeping assist. Now it does not do any kind of hands-free thing. It's all hands-on stuff. But Volvo's system in the past has been really good with the assistance, very safe. Obviously, that's Volvo's mantra, but very consistent with its assistance most of the time as well. But we do have some gentle corners here coming up. We can test it out. But while we wait for the corners here, as far as other safety tech goes, you do have all the basic stuff is standard blind spot monitoring, automatic emergency braking, all those things that we're used to these days. That all does come standard. But Volvo does still make you pay extra for adaptive cruise control, and that's something that some others, for example, like the Lexuses, they offer the adaptive cruise as standard versus charging you extra here and there. So that's the only thing that's a little bit unfortunate. But now we have some gentle corners here, and it does say to keep your hands on the wheel, obviously, but I'm letting it do the steering assist for me here. And yeah, it's doing a really good job here of staying nice and centered in the lane and holding the lane really well, making lots of little micro adjustments, making sure that it's really well positioned here, but it's not ping-ponging or anything, and does a really good job there with that assistance. And so yeah, it's a really nice feature to have. Obviously, again, you still got to keep your hands on the wheel. It's not hands-free like some of the others out there these days, but still is certainly a nice thing to have, and will help just make your drives a little more relaxing, having the vehicle do some of those micro corrections for you instead of you having to do those all yourself, and just giving you that support is certainly nice, on long journeys. But otherwise, out here on the highway too, at even some higher highway speeds, you don't really hear much road noise, at least on this road. It's pretty smooth. I mean, these tires, though, have these really thin sidewalls. It's a sportier tire. You'd think maybe it'd be a little noisier, but it's totally fine. Pretty nice and quiet. And this is a really nice cruiser. If you had the radio going or had conversation going, you wouldn't really hear anything, honestly. So Volvos are still really top-notch with their refinement and luxury, in my opinion. One other thing, though, I have to mention about the XC60, though, is that I did have a check engine light pop on at one point during the week here, and after a couple of key cycles, it did end up eventually going away. But not sure. I mean, this vehicle is less than 1,000 miles, and for it to throw a check engine light, I mean, that's just something that majority of brand new vehicles shouldn't do, and I'm sure the majority of XC60s don't do either, but it's just strange. I'm not sure why. I mean, especially since this powertrain, yes, they tweaked the motor to get rid of the supercharger a couple of years ago, but it's a pretty solid powertrain at this point, I think. It's been out for many years. You'd think there wouldn't be too many surprises and they would have ironed out all the kinks. So why a vehicle with less than 1,000 miles through a random check engine light? I don't know. Hopefully a fluke with this one. But I've heard that Volvo's can be a little quirky sometimes with the electronics and just the whole vehicle in general. And I love the brand, and I really like, again, everything about this, but it doesn't give you a good feeling to have little glitches like that, even if they go away, it just kind of shakes your confidence in the vehicle. And it's like, okay, well, if it randomly threw a check engine light for no reason on a brand new car, you know, when will it do it next? Hopefully never, but you know, that's just one thing that I personally just don't love. A car's got to be 100%, and the second it isn't, you know, that kind of leaves a question in your mind. As far as efficiency goes here in the XC60, that's going to come down to how often you plug it in. You know, if you plug it in every night, you drive less than 35 miles a day, and your accelerations aren't too demanding, you know, you could drive this completely electrically 100% of the time if you want. But if you do happen to use the gas engine, you exhaust the battery, or you just want to have that extra power, Volvo does rate these at 28 mpg for every metric, city, highway combined. So 28 mpg is what you'll probably end up getting, you know, once that electric range is done. And again, it still is a hybrid, and it uses that even when you don't have any, you know, charge in the battery. It still keeps a little bit of reserve there to always do the basic, you know, rolling and all that other kind of hybrid stuff here. So, you know, you still have that, of course, to boost your efficiency. And I think Car and Driver even observed something like 30 mpg over their driving. And so it also comes down to, again, whether you get this Polestar Engineered version or if you get the regular T8 versions, because this same powertrain is available in regular versions of the XC60. You don't need the Polestar Engineered thing. You just lose the brakes and, you know, a couple of other sportier touches, but you still get the same powertrain. So if you were to pair this with smaller wheels, I believe you get even 1 or 2 more miles of range, and you can, of course, have better efficiency as well. So just keep that in mind. And then really the last thing to mention, though, is the pricing and how it compares to competition, even though there's really no direct competitor still these days, which is crazy to say also, you know, that all these years later with these sporty versions of the XC60, there's no direct competitor with a plug-in hybrid, really. So as far as just this vehicle in general, these start for a regular recharge XC60 with this powertrain. They start right at $59,000 or so. And then this one, as tested, like I said, is almost $77,000. And now at that price point, you know, it's pricey for sure. And I think as much as I like the sportier handling and the bigger wheels and the sportier seats, you know, there's really no options. So this one isn't optioned up or anything. It's basically, they're all going to be, you know, $76,000, $77,000 pretty much. And that is pricey, but again, it just comes down to, do you want a plug-in hybrid SUV with this much power? Because if you want this much power and the other competitors, you got to go BMW X3M, which is also, by the way, in the low $80,000 range, a little more expensive than this even. And then again, if you just want a bunch of power, again, getting one of these nicely equipped, they all come pretty well equipped, somewhere between, you know, $60,000 and $70,000, I think is a really solid value as well if you just want the punch. And XC60s still handle really nicely, even if you don't get the Polestar Engineered stuff. So, but that's it. There's really no other competitors. All the other competitors are non-performance, regular plug-in hybrids. Most of them do far less power. I think actually all of them do far less power. And they're also still going to be pretty expensive, even without all the sporty stuff on them. So I think this is still, even though it is high, you know, I think when you look at the non-existent competition, if you want a performance SUV with a plug-in hybrid, this is still really the only game in town, so they could charge whatever they wanted, but I think it's a very reasonable price when you look at other non-plug-in hybrid performance SUVs. Overall, though, really just, I like the XC60 Polestar Engineered here a lot. It's, you know, a lot of fun to drive. It's dynamic, and I just, again, like the forward-thinking mentality that, you know, everyone is still struggling to keep up with these days. And I think with the Volvo, they're very well positioned, with everyone flocking to hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and all the other competitors, again, just not really offering much there. I think that this is was really very brilliant of them to think of many years ago, and to continue to offer it here is also very brilliant with others, you know, discontinuing their plug-in hybrids in the past few years. I think Volvo played this right, and hopefully it'll just grow in popularity here for the last couple of years until it gets replaced by, you know, I'm assuming an electric version down the road. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the XC60 Polestar Engineered. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Volvo for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.